Today, February 11th, is the International Day for Women and Girls in Science. My name is Marguerite Klein, and I chair the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Committee in the UCD School of Medicine. In our school, we recognise the importance of equality, diversity and inclusion among our students and staff to drive optimum school performance through the active engagement of all. We strive to lead and work with initiatives that support, promote and demonstrate a culture of inclusivity and diversity. We are proud of our school's Bronze Athena Swan Award, which recognises our commitment to promote gender equality. International Day of Women and Girls in Science is an initiative of the United Nations, which recognises that full and equal access to and participation in science, technology and innovation for women and girls of all ages is imperative for achieving gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls. To mark International Day of Women and Girls in Science 2022, we are highlighting the work of female researchers in our school. We have invited some of them here today to tell you about the important biomedical and clinical scientific translational research they are doing and why they support International Day for Women and Girls in Science. Our first guest is Dr. Daryl Andrews, a postdoctoral research fellow working in the Conway Institute for Biomolecular and Biomedical Science.
Thank you, Marguerite. So as you mentioned, I'm a postdoc in the Diabetes Complications Research Centre here in the Conway Institute. And my research really focuses on trying to understand the underlying causes of diabetic kidney disease. And I have a particular interest in the role that the innate immune system plays in this. And I'm using zebrafish to help me study this. Now, you might ask, why zebrafish? It seems like an odd choice. But actually, humans and zebrafish, they share quite a lot of similarities. And we share about 70% of our genes. We have similar kidneys, similar immune systems. And so zebrafish really make a very useful model for my research. And I can do lots of things, like I can model disease with them and I can use them to work out the functions of genes, and I can screen drugs. And so all of these experiments and the insights from these experiments, they're really helping us to better understand the pathogenesis of kidney disease in humans. And this is really important because we know that the numbers of patients with diabetes is continuing to increase, and about 30% of these patients will develop kidney disease. And at the moment, there's really no effective therapies for these patients, and many of them will end up with kidney failure, and they'll require either dialysis or a kidney transplant. So there's really a very urgent need for us to better understand the pathogenesis of the disease so we can design new and better therapies. And I think that it's really fitting on International Day for Women and Girls in Science that we stop and we celebrate all the women who do this type of research. And women have made and they continue to make very significant contributions to science. And I think we really need to recognise and to support and to celebrate those contributions and to encourage more women to take up careers in science. And as a female early career researcher, I think that having, very strong female mentorship and leadership is really critical to encouraging more women into this career. And so in the DCRC, I'm very fortunate that we have this. So we have a female director, Professor Catherine Godson, and actually 50% of the PIs in the centre are actually female, including Fiona, and you can see them all here. And because of that, and as a testament to that, we actually have lots of really amazing female postdocs and PhD students and research assistants. And I couldn't fit them all on the slide here today, but they're really doing amazing work and really contributing hugely to their fields. And I think it's really important that we continue to encourage and support them to do so.
Our next guest is Professor Geraldine McCarthy, a consultant rheumatologist at the Mater Hospital in Dublin and UCD Clinical Full Professor.
Thanks very much, Marguerite. So my story is a little bit different. I've been in practice for many years. I've pretty much always been full-time clinical, apart from a time in the United States when I did some bench research, where I developed my interest in calcium crystal deposition diseases, specifically the role of calcium hydroxyapatite in osteoarthritis. And that would be the area that I've continued in, coming back to Ireland, and I've continued my collaborations in that area. It's a very important area because those of us who are interested in these crystals believe they are a potential therapeutic target in osteoarthritis, which is the most common form of arthritis occurring in humans. Because I'm a full-time clinician, I've found myself involved in all types of research, but my common theme has been crystal deposition diseases. In the clinic, this would include gout, which is the most common form of inflammatory arthritis occurring in humans. And worldwide, it is very poorly managed, as well as the diagnosis being suboptimal. And so I'm part of an international initiative to try and improve this, as well as trying to improve it locally. In addition, there's another form of calcium crystal deposition disease called calcium pyrophosphate dihydrate crystal deposition disease. And it also is very troublesome and poorly appreciated. And so there's an international initiative that I'm a part of to ameliorate this. I would say that research has kept me really engaged in my job all these years. I still love my job in the Mater Hospital. I suppose one of the things I give UCD credit for is the fact that when they established the clinical pathways, they appointed me, a woman, as the first full clinical professor of medicine under the clinical pathways. And the second one was also a woman. So I thought that was really encouraging. I think it's really important for people like me to do research and to show the way to my junior colleagues. And consequently, I fully support the International Day of Women and Girls in Science, because we all know that women are brilliant. They sometimes lack confidence, and it's up to those of us who've been around a long time to encourage them. And consequently, I'd like to say thank you to Marguerite for putting this programme together. Thank you.
Thank you, Geraldine. So our next guest, Dr. Dervla Dooley, is Assistant Professor in the School of Medicine.
Thank you, Marguerite. As a PI at the UCD School of Medicine, I run a traumatic spinal cord injury research lab. And this means that my lab is really interested in understanding the pathophysiology behind traumatic spinal cord injury. And we can divide this really into two parts. The first is the primary mechanical injury, which occurs at the moment of impact. And this leads to cell death and in turn motor, sensory and autonomic dysfunction in patients. The secondary, more inflammatory response then occurs a little bit later on. And this leads to adjacent tissue damage, as well as infiltration and activation of inflammatory cells. And it's really this secondary inflammatory response that my lab is very interested in understanding and targeting in order to try and modulate this response and modulate inflammation to ultimately develop better therapeutics and improve recovery after injury. The contribution and impact of this research is really quite vast, because there are currently around 27 million people worldwide living with a long-term disability as a result of spinal cord injury. And although there has been much research progress in recent years, unfortunately, there are still no therapeutic interventions currently available. So there really is an urgent need to develop new strategies and therapies. So the health impacts that will result from this research are really important, and they will directly affect spinal cord injury patients. I'm really delighted to celebrate and support the International Day of Women and Girls in Science this year, because I feel it's really critical that we celebrate women and girls in science and really support one another's successes. I'm a firm believer in implementing and celebrating equality, diversity, and inclusion. And if I have any advice for any young upcoming female scientists, I would say to be curious, ask challenging questions, and really follow your passion for science. And finally, I'd like to highlight two wonderful female scientists from my lab, Kira and Dami, who are shown here and who are doing just that. They're following their passion and pursuing their scientific career. Thank you.
Thanks, Dervla. So our next guest is Dr. Anna Curley, a consultant neonatologist in the National Maternity Hospital here in Dublin and Clinical Associate Professor in UCD.
Thanks, Marguerite. I'm delighted to be asked to talk today. I'm a full-time clinician working in the National Maternity Hospital. And then in my spare time, I do some clinical translational research, essentially trying to understand how to better manage the preterm babies that we look after. And one of the main areas that I research is in the area of platelet transfusion. And in 2019, we finally finished the trial and published in the New England Journal of Medicine. And what it showed essentially was really unexpected. So that at the time, we thought that it was safer to give platelets sooner and to give more platelets in order to hopefully prevent preterm babies from bleeding. Instead, what we found out was that the safer option, or so we had thought, actually causing 7% more babies to die or have major bleeds within this population. So to put this in context, in the US alone, where there are 1.8 million preterm babies born every year, if the clinicians there were to implement the findings of our research trial, we would save the lives of 200 to 300 babies per year in the US alone. So it's amazing. And I think those are the huge benefits of being involved in science and research, is that you have so much more potential to have impact beyond, say, the local neonatal intensive care unit. And what's really interesting as well on International Day of Women and Girls in Science is that even though neonatology is a relatively new specialty, really only dating from the 50s and 60s, at the time there would have been very few women within medicine, but actually there is an amazingly high number of female researchers from the time who were doing trials and making significant findings and really driving clinical care forward. So I would say within neonatology, I've been inspired by women who've gone before, and I would hope that what we do has the potential to do the same. What you can see in the authorship list on our trial is that 2/3 of the authorship are female. And you can also see from all the photos on the right of everybody who was involved in our trial, that many, I think probably 80 to 90% of all of the people who made the trial a success are women. So I think that women are genuinely collaborative, and I would love to see more women involved in science. I think that they have the potential to have huge impact and to really drive research forward in the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. And so our next guest is Dr. Fiona McGillicuddy, Assistant Professor in the School of Medicine.
Hi, Marguerite. Thanks a million for giving me the opportunity to talk today. I'm an assistant professor here in the School of Medicine. I did a science degree. I specialised in pharmacology, and I discovered quite early on when I was a teenager that I really had a passion for science, and this came about by me piggytailing on the back of my older sister's best friend who was doing a science degree, and she let me follow her around for the day, and I had a great day. And I was really inspired at that point to do a science degree and pursue a degree in science and a PhD in science. I'm also a mother of 2 small children and often work like this. So this is me minding my baby while working from home. So the nice thing about this career is that there's a lot of flexibility in it. But I also think this picture highlights why we need more women in science. We need the power of the woman's voice and the woman's lived experience to be stronger in science. We need more women coming into science. We need more women representative in areas that they're not currently represented in, such as in physics, etc. So I guess from a research perspective, Margaret, you can move to the next slide. My group are really interested in the links between obesity and cardiovascular disease or heart disease and diabetes. We know that patients who are living with obesity are at increased risk for these diseases. Not all patients are at the same risk. Some are at higher risk than others. So one of the areas of focus for my research group is to try and identify new blood tests that can differentiate between people who have high risk of developing heart disease or diabetes to those who have low risk of developing heart disease and diabetes. But I thought it was important to highlight today that one of the things that happens in cardiovascular disease research historically has been an overrepresentation of males in clinical trials. So some of the clinical trials that have gone before us had 85% male participants and around 15% female participants. So we really understand heart disease pathogenesis in men, but not so much in women. And this is a really important, and it really highlights why it's so important for women to be present doing research and driving the female message home and ensuring that our research is representative of both genders. And that's why I'm a big supporter of the International Day of Women and Girls in Science. So thanks a million, Marguerite.
Thank you, Fiona. And our next guest today is Dr. Sabine Cole, full professor of developmental biology and anatomy in the School of Medicine.
Hello, everybody. I'm very glad to be here today and have a few minutes to speak to you. My research topic is male and female reproductive health. And what you see here is a sperm in the oviduct attaching to the oviductal cells. We call that gameto-maternal interaction. So we look what sperm and oocyte do in the female genital tract. We also look at fertilization. Here you see one sperm trying to get into the oocyte, but it can't because one sperm has already entered. Again, an oocyte in sperm. And here you see how the sperm just gets through the zona pellucida. And last, we look at early embryo-maternal communication. So that means we have a look how the embryo talks to the mother, especially during the first days. And that's very interesting because we could show that really on day 2 already the embryo is signaling to the mother, hi, I'm here, and the mother is answering. And lastly, we are looking at the effect of diseases on these communication, on these interaction. And here you see very important bacteria. It's Chlamydia trachomatis, which really impacts male and female reproductive health and also overall health. And yeah, why is this research important? First, you have to know that every 5th couple in Europe and in Ireland experiences involuntary childlessness. Second, male infertility has risen over 50%. And third, we need new diagnostic tools for infertility, for improvement of the treatment of diseases. So to develop novel therapeutic strategies, it's really important to know more about these processes. And in the end, the aim is to increase the success of assisted reproductive technologies. We call them ART. And I'm very glad to support this initiative because one of my really important aims is to promote young researchers in their career, young females, and really to prepare them to become leaders in research. Thank you very much.
And our next guest, Dr. Virginie Gauthier, is Associate Professor in the School of Medicine, located in the Centre for Experimental Pathogen Host Research.
Thank you, Marguerite. So I'm a molecular biologist and a PI in CEPHR here. And with my team, we run translational research program in infectious disease and also in One Health. Our research activities aim to characterize the host virus interface at the molecular level. I like to see it as a molecular dialogue between 2 different entities. On the one side, you have the virus, and its aim is to actually hijack or co-opt cellular machinery to its own advantage, to be able to replicate efficiently and take over the host. And on the other side, you have the immune system, the host immune system with humoral, cellular, and innate immune response, which job is to actually counteract the viral progression and create a systematic or even local antiviral state. So our job is to actually decipher what is happening at this level. And because we're working with risk group 3 pathogens like HIV or SARS-CoV-2, we have to work under strict biosafety level 3 guidelines. And here in CEPHR, I am also in charge of the management of the research section of the containment level 3 facility, which we need, which is specific laboratory environment to work with these viruses. So in terms of contribution to health and the society, I think first, the goal is actually to identify maybe new biomarkers of disease progression and pathogenesis, and to characterize new therapeutic target for intervention and to develop new treatment strategies. And like more recently, for example, we also work with the European trial clinical studies, which is part of the EU Vaxxerate program. And there they try to test the efficacy of vaccine in different priority groups. So it can be the elderly, the pregnant women, or the children, and also the efficacy of vaccine for new SARS-CoV-2 variants, or the combination of different existing vaccines as well. So our job here in CEPHR, responsibility is to actually characterize the capacity of the immune response to neutralize SARS-CoV-2 and also its variants of concern. And because we know that neutralizing titers are a good correlation of protection as well. And what I'm actually quite proud of as well, and my ambition is actually to train or to participate to the training of the next generation of experts, virologists and infectious diseases specialists. So then we have a very well-trained scientific workforce that will be able to take leading roles into the management and response to future outbreaks. So regarding this very special day, I'm very happy to participate to it. I think we've made huge progress, certainly in terms of the number of women engaged in research or in studying science as well. But I think there is a little bit more work to be done in terms of career development and mentoring. And certainly when you look at the number of senior position filled by female academic leaders, or even the same in terms of leadership position in the industry, but it's all happening now. Thank you, Margaret.
Our final guest is Dr. Sinead Holden, a research fellow in the School of Medicine, based in the UCD Clinical Research Centre.
Thanks, Marguerite. And my research as a research fellow focuses on trials methods research. So you might be wondering what that actually is. And first of all, I'll explain to you what randomized trials are. So randomized trials are studies that test the effects of new interventions, so treatments, medical devices, or procedures on human health. And this forms the center of evidence-based medicine and clinical decision-making. But the question is, how do we plan, do, analyze, and share the results of randomized trials? And that's where trials methods research comes in. Trials methods research tries to improve the quality and the efficiency of how we run our clinical trials and the way in which our trials are carried out so that we can reach better information faster. And as part of the trials methods research going on in UCD Clinical Research Centre, we've developed the DEFT trials program. So this is Digital Efficient Trials, which is all about integrating digital technology into clinical trials in order to increase the pace at which we can generate new knowledge and increase the efficiency in which we do this. By conducting digital and integrating digital technology into clinical trials, we can increase participant engagement within clinical trials and bring the trial to the patient rather than bringing the patient to the hospital site to conduct the clinical trial. One of the things that we're doing at the moment is developing the Clinical Research Centre app, which patients can actually find clinical trials to participate in from their own home. As well as this, we're looking at other ways in which we can integrate technology in order to capture different measures of human health as patients go about their own lives. So overall, we believe this will impact the way in which we generate knowledge and in the way in which we test interventions for human health and have a real impact on real world evidence and decision making. I'm a big supporter of women in science, and I'm really grateful for the fact that I am lucky enough to have a female mentor in UCD School of Medicine. I think it's really, really important that we continue to have that representation because we know that diversity is really, really important within science. And having a place in which females feel welcome and have other females in which they can relate to their experiences has really been helpful for me in my career so far. And I'm looking forward to being able to continue to do this with the next generation of female researchers.